Hello, Yalsa Land. I'm Shannon Peterson. I'm the Public Services Director at Kitsap Regional Library, and my partner, Linda Braun, in co-editing a new book for Yalsa called Putting Teens First. What is the subtitle?
Roadmap. Putting teens first in library services, a roadmap.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome, Shannon.
So that publication came out this summer, and we've been kind of extending the conversation and some of the themes in that book by talking with folks out in library land who are doing interesting future-focused work for and with teens. And I'm really excited today. We're talking with Megha Subramaniam about her work at University of Maryland. And Megha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, Shannon and Linda, thank you so much for inviting me to come and do this recording. I'm really delighted. By the way, your book rocks. So thank you for editing it and getting people together to provide chapters for the book. So I'm Megha Subramaniam, and I am an associate professor at the College of Information Studies at the University of Maryland. I'm also the Associate Director for the Information Policy and Access Center. So as part of my work, I do research, and I also teach in the MLIS program, Masters in Library and Information Science program. So should I tell a little bit more about myself, what I do, or do you, okay, good, all right. So I actually have a great view, by the way. That's like this view over here where I get to see kids walking around. So I might be distracted while I'm talking to you, looking at those people. So, and sometimes I get inspirations while I look at those people. So what I do at Maryland is that I conduct research on the use of libraries as effective learning environments for the development of emerging literacies. So that includes scientific literacy, design thinking, digital literacy, computational thinking, privacy literacy, and the list goes on. And I specifically focus on looking at underserved, underrepresented, disadvantaged young adults. So through research funding from different agencies, National Science Foundation, Institute of Museum and Library Services, National Library of Medicine, I'm able to work with various types of libraries, so school and public primarily in the DC metro area, to design learning environments to facilitate learning of these emerging literacies. And one of the things that I really focus on my research is to include the voice of youth and their families as I'm doing this, right? So I also teach in the MLIS program at the University of Maryland, specifically courses in the school library specialization, and also a new specialization that I helped develop, which is called Youth Experience Specialization, which I can talk about later. So I also currently lead the design, development, and implementation of a Youth Experience Certificate program for librarians who are currently practicing, so both school and public librarians. So the goal of the YX Certificate program is actually to promote 21st century skills among youth ages from birth to 18, through incorporating participatory design principles, design thinking of approaches, community partnerships, and how do you bring all this together to design programs and services that really include the voice of youth.
It's amazing all the things you are doing and what your focus is. What we really wanted to hone in on today is the Youth Experience Certificate and how that came to be and what the goals are for it. So can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up designing and developing the YX program and certificate?
Yeah, so great question. It's always good to think back on what I did, right? So primarily there are three reasons why I decided to develop this YX certificate program. First is the changing landscape of teens culture as producers of information rather than consumers. I know that we've kind of heard about this again and again, but also what is really important is because of the changing landscape of teen and how they deal with information, there's also the need for librarians to have design thinking skills to leverage this culture that the teens are into for learning, right? So let me talk a little bit of that about that. So you can definitely see the shifting landscape of new technologies, right? So social media, ubiquitous computing has really led to the emergence of participatory culture. So previously, society sort of embraced experts as producers of information, and kind of public consumes it, right? But now the general public kind of draws upon new media. When I talk about general public, that includes youth. And they can become producers of information, problem solvers, and also even experts themselves. I have a 10-year-old who learns how to draw, right, by looking at YouTube videos, right? Specific type of drawing. He's really into detail-oriented drawing. So these are the things that he's learning from another youth, which, up to maybe 10 years ago, this was not the norm. So with this culture shift, so a movement called design thinking has emerged, which really emphasizes applying these processes and philosophies of designers. So, empathizing with stakeholders, inventing innovative prototypes. How do you then completely, very quickly go through iterative processes to kind of very quickly come up with solutions, right? So this is something that librarians need to embrace to solve new challenges and realize new opportunities. So for librarians to be able to utilize design thinking as a process to design and develop programs and services with youth, they also need to be able to facilitate ways that young adults can actually go through this process, right? So two things. One is the librarians need to be aware of this design thinking processes to design and develop their programs, but at the same time, give these skills to young adults so that they can also do this problem solving of everyday problem and allow them to actually make some progress in their lives using this design thinking process, right? So that's the first reason. I just think that the changing landscape of teen culture and librarians haven't really sort of caught up to it yet, right? The second thing is the emerging importance of the power of teen voices. We kind of just say this in the passing. We need to include teen voices in the design of programs and services. But really, we need to know how to do this, right? So traditionally, librarians have been kind of asking teens in the passing of what they think about programs and services. Most of the time, you get a shrug or you get a short answer. It was great. Or you get an answer like, why are you asking me this, right? That look, right? But we can draw from other fields such as human-computer interaction, for example, and learning sciences, where they actually have techniques and methodologies to really engage young adults to provide their voices. And that has been done very successfully in the design of technologies for young children. So since we at the University of Maryland have this expertise, we do have faculty who have been doing this for the past 10 to 12 years. We have new faculty that are coming up with new methods to engage young children, even as young as 3 or 4, to be able to provide voices. So we decided to bring this type of methodologies and techniques into librarianship so that librarians themselves then can practice these methods, engage teens and children to provide their voices in the design of programming and services. I have one more reason and then I'll stop. So the other reason is teens, we all know, are immersed in technology. But the librarians are really, really nervous about this, right? In terms of keeping up with technology and being able to offer this technology-infused programs. And we always kind of start with, let's buy this technology. Let's have this stuff in our libraries, right? So I'm not saying stuff is not important. I'm convinced stuff is important. Stuff is definitely needed. And by stuff, I mean like computers or tablets or circuits or whatever, 3D printers, right? But how librarians choose to use the stuff to facilitate learning of emerging literacies is the part that's really, really hard, I think. And they get nervous about it because they're very focused on the stuff, like how do I know, how can I use this, right? How to use this stuff. And they tend to forget sometimes about the learning part of it. So in this program, why I designed this program is I wanted librarians to learn how to facilitate technology-enabled programming, even if they don't know much about the technology. So new technologies emerge as we speak. So the skill to keep up with technology is not something that we cover in this program. I mean, we really don't care what type of technology, right? Skills such as being able to mentor, being able to facilitate, being able to engage community partners to assist with technology, knowing about youth development and how you can leverage those youth developments so that teens can actually learn by themselves, right? And then engaging teens to help each other, sort of peer mentoring. So these are the skills that librarians should have. And this is one of the reasons that I created this program. Done.
Oh, Mega. I feel like we could talk for hours about any one of those 3 points, but I know that we have a time limit, so I'm going to try and focus myself. I mean, I guess I would just say I love, to your third point, I love the idea of kind of getting back to the learning, but also, like, even more important than that, I think it's a point of like highlighting like the basic tenets of what we're trying to achieve in youth programs. And it's interesting and funny that like we're still doing that work. Like we're talking about the basic components of like why we're doing what we're doing. It's mentorship and all of those things, and the peer, building that peer learning. I love that that's like we're bringing that back up to the top. So a question I have, and you know, going back to your first point about the interesting nuance of librarians going through this learning process while facilitating youth going through this learning process, I'm imagining that this program is new for you and your colleagues who are working on the YX program. And I've met some of your amazing cohort students, like the work they're doing is just like and awesome. But I would imagine that you're sort of going through a similar process too. And Linda, I know that you're involved in this program. So what has been your learning pathway through this, and kind of what's been surprising to you as the facilitator of the facilitators that are facilitating?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Shannon, because you're right. As we design this program, I mean, we are always kind of looking at how we can improve the certificate program, right? So even before we started designing the courses for the certificate program, we actually engaged with librarians. So we went to ALA, we went to the YALSA symposium. We actually kind of modeled what we work with, you know, how we work with children in terms of getting the youth voices, right? We modeled that and got librarians' voice into the design of the courses, right? So it's not like we knew like these are the skills that are necessary, but we also wanted to make sure the librarian's voice is incorporated. So we did all that. In addition to that, I mean, we also kind of went to go through this design thinking process, right? With the design of this program, with the design of the courses, right? This is currently the first cohort is taking the courses, right? They're taking their third out of the fourth course. So what I've been learning from their students is the enormous demands and challenges and also opportunities that they have with the community that they're serving. So with the teens, with their community partners, from parents. And I'm really amazed like how they bring this knowledge in addition to the skills that we are trying to, facilitate in this program, right? They are bringing all this added layers of challenges and demands and opportunities, and bringing that into the discussions that we have. So this program is completely online. So the discussion happens asynchronously, and we also have an optional synchronous portion. They can come and do a chat, but that's completely optional. And we talk about this added thing. So yeah, so we have all this all these methodologies to work with children. But then how do we, so for example, how do we bring in teens from places like the foster homes, right? And how do we bring this techniques to either we bring them to the library or we go to them, right? So we talk about issues like this. It's not just like, these are the methods and, it's going to work for everybody. I like that the students are bringing all these added layers of challenges that potentially will come, right? So, and I'm also really able to see how determined these librarians are to do as much as they can with the knowledge that they are getting from this program, right? I'm also learning one more thing, which is as much as we are learning from each other, learning from the instructors of the YX program, it's really also important to educate the supervisors of the YX program, supervisors of teen service librarians in general, because while these YX librarians know the power of the YX knowledge that they're getting, they also need support to implement this, right? So we are in the process of arranging to talk to the supervisors of our current cohort so that we can share what are the amazing things that we've been talking about, what are the things that the students are working on, the projects that they're working on, so that these librarians, when they go out, they get to apply this knowledge, not just in their library branch, but also the system worldwide.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So have people kind of talked about that? Like how, you talked in the beginning about how you're kind of pulling in ideas from other departments in your university, and so it requires the librarians to be kind of educating within their system and creating a little bit of a collective impact movement within their system. Have they talked about ways that they're thinking about that, or that they're trying to move that forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have had a couple of librarians who've been presenting at the state library conferences to get people to pay attention to the knowledge that they have been getting. They have done some in-house professional development to their own group of librarians in their library system. And they have had some, I will not say that it's as easy as it sounds, right? They've got got really difficult questions sometimes, we don't, the common thing that they've been hearing is that we don't have the capacity to do this type of things, right? Mm-hmm. But because I think these librarians can be the models that can do things with very limited resource, limited capacity, I think they themselves are kind of being the models that people can model after, right? Mm-hmm. So while they understand all these challenges, they are also facing the same challenges. So I think it's great that they are able to convey that. I think it works very differently when people like me go and convey this to librarians who are in the field. And I might move the notch a little bit, right? But when librarians themselves are able to mentor other librarians, I think that makes a bigger impact. And that's exactly the impact that we want to make through this YX program. So the YX program is funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And one of the things that we promised IMLS to do is to IMLS is that we want to disseminate this knowledge as wide as possible, right? Once we have gone through the iteration of the YX program, we want to disseminate the syllabus so that other higher education institutions that are offering MLIS programs can take this, or even can offer it as a postmaster certificate. Sorry, I digressed a lot from the question that you asked.
There's a lot of digression that could happen, but that was interesting. So thank you. Yeah. Linda, what are you thinking about?
So you are in your first cohort, you said.
That's right.
It's about to have a second cohort. It's going to start soon. So tell us about the process of becoming a YX certificate student. And also, I'm curious because as you're talking about the librarians being mentors and being really like what they're learning in this program requires more than the day-to-day learning. It requires making a commitment to perhaps change. And so what you're thinking about those who are thinking of applying might want to consider about themselves and about their interests and about their abilities to participate, because it's a real commitment. I mean, it's a really exciting program, but thinking about what they need to do to apply, and then also what someone needs to think about themselves if they are thinking of applying, if any of that made sense.
Definitely made sense. Two main things. One, they have to set their mindset that they will be, how do I say this? Set their mindset to be engaged in thinking and conversations that may be different from what they are exposed to in their library system, and also in their MLIS programs, right? It's going to be a different program. It's going to be a program where you are going to be exposed to concepts that are coming from different disciplines, but very much applicable to library science, right? Come to the program with a mindset to accept change, because these are the changes that are needed to provide better services for teens and the communities that you're serving. Secondly, I have to say one other thing is that the physical stamina that's needed, right? Courses are 12 weeks long. There are 4 courses completed in a year. So you'll be done in a year with all this knowledge that you have. But it does need physical stamina. You need to juggle work. You need to juggle school. You need to be good at both at the same time, right? The things that I've been saying from the first cohort is that they are able to bring some of these things that they're doing at school and immediately apply it to work, and even using some of the work stuff that they're doing, the programs that they're designing, the programs that they're thinking of designing a year from now or whenever that is, they are bringing those into the work that they're doing in the courses, right? So they're using that as content for their assignments. So you need to be very strategic and do that. And we as instructors, we really want that to happen. So it's not like you're going to school and you're going to work. We really want to see that intersection between what you're doing in the library with your teens right now, in the future, and we want that to intersect with what you're doing. So it's very experiential.
And I think in terms of, I mean, your first point about the work and the conversation being maybe very different than kind of what the norm is or what the mainstream is for professional library conversations or MLIS conversations. What I'm assuming with that point, and maybe if you want to clarify that a bit, is that this work is more about your role in facilitating to your local environment. And so although there's sort of frameworks and processes that you're teaching to people, it's like the discussion is all about like how to adapt that to your particular teens and your particular skill set and community. Is that kind of what you're going with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I always am amazed with this sort of mindset that everything can be packaged and scalable to any type of library. It doesn't work that way. Every library is unique. Some have more support than the others, and more so, every community is very different, right? So we really kind of leverage that, and making sure that we are not pushing out like boxes or toolkits for you to use, right? But we are actually making sure that you bring all the information that you have with the community, leveraging your own expertise, and how do you then adapt that, use the knowledge that we are providing to design services or programs that will then serve your community, right? The other thing, in addition to what you said, Shannon, is that we don't teach specific type of technology, right? If people are coming to this program to learn Scratch, you definitely can, but that will be part of the assignments. Maybe you're facilitating a Scratch programming, right, at your library, and you can learn Scratch as in the process of doing that. We don't do that. We don't really teach any type of technology. So I say that out loud to all, even during the information sessions. We don't do that, right? But if you're interested, you can learn any type of technology that you want in order to be able to facilitate any type of programming. Technology is going to be so it just evolves a lot, and it doesn't matter. You will have the skills to facilitate any type of programs.
And Mega, just to follow up on that, and what you've said before about the stuff is, Scratch is not what's important. It's what the community needs, right? What your teens need. And so Scratch might be the answer, but it might not be. So stepping back and thinking about, what does the community need? What do the teens need? And then how do we do that? It might be Scratch, it might be something else. So that's the framing, right?
Yeah. And this program definitely has a slant towards technology infused programming, right? But you're absolutely right. It really is determined by the community, right? So the whole thing I said about youth voice and everything, we do build in methods for you to engage your teens to speak up about what they want, right? And, technology is broad. I mean, it could be Scratch. It could be just kind of an unplugged technology, right? You might be just using paper to design something, and that would be a very low tech technology, but that's the first step of prototyping, right? So it could vary depending on the needs of your community.
And I love that. I love that you said leveraging. So every local environment is different, and your teens are different, your skills are different, but like the power in thinking about that and problem solving for that, like that's the thing that like you could focus on till the end of the, century. Like that's so iterative and evolving. And I feel like that's like the fun puzzle to jump into, and something that's so exciting about your program. I feel like we need to hold true. I want to ask you 100 million more questions, but hold true to our time here. Linda, you look like you're about to say.
No, well, I just want to make sure you tell people if they're interested in applying for the next cohort, what is it? How do they do that? What does
All right. So if they're interested in applying for the next cohort, let's just go with the prompt that Linda just gave me. First of all, visit our website, which is YX, so Youth Experience, yx.umd.edu. So you'll get all the information that you need. Application is open right now, and application closes mid-February. We also recently held an information session, so the recording for the information session is on the website. We are offering competitive scholarships this year. So there is definitely financial support, not all, but there is some support. And I would encourage you to connect with the supervisors of your library system, or if you're a school librarian, you're like a school district, to see what type of funds that you have for such professional development. We have had the current cohort librarians have been able to leverage that in order to pay their out-of-pocket expenses. Visit us, visit our website at yx.umd.edu.
I just have one more question. So you have a cohort that's gone through Have you guys, are you thinking about developing case studies or anything from that cohort of the work that's been done, just to, I'm thinking back to that kind of educating supervisors and managers on the value of this. Like, are there tools that that group has produced that could kind of help sell this up and show the impact of the work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So right now they are in the third course. The fourth course, the capstone in youth experience, will be a culmination of all the three courses, bringing all the skills that they learned from the three courses into a design of technology infused program that they will be running in their library. So I'm hoping to be able to package those presentations that the librarians will be making to me and my team, and hopefully be able to share that with supervisors as an examples of how do you incorporate all this YX knowledge, incorporate youth voice, participatory design, community partnership, all the things that I mentioned earlier, and how does that impact the design of programs, right? How programs come up very differently and it meets the needs of your team. So hopefully that will be out once we finish the last course, so which will be probably middle of next year, 2018. Yes.
Okay. Yay. Well, thanks so much for talking with us, Megha. I've known about this program, but it's been really fun to kind of dig in some of the background and everything about it, and
yeah,
the work that you guys are doing at University of Maryland is so exciting.
Great, thank you. Pleasure is all mine. I really loved talking to both of you, and thank you for having me.